Welcome to We Are Not Alive. I am Gus Zagarella.
And I'm Henry Galley, and if you're here, you probably know you're watching Two Professional Writers, a show where me and Gus are living doing this stuff. Talk about writing advice, writing figures, and just kind of life in general all of the time. I'd also today like to welcome Max Landis. No, he's not here in the studio with us, but he has big Google's his own name energy, so he's definitely watching this. Hi, Max. We're going to say some very
Hey,
unkind
Max.
things about you in this.
Yeah, so, back in 2016, when everybody still thought you had a good reputation, I happened to be a big fan of you. Something, maybe a few things changed in between then and now, but now we'll be covering you.
Well, we're not going to make this video too much of a bummer and try to speak over some people who were affected by some genuinely heinous shit. If you would like to read into what we are talking around, we have links to the Daily Beast article regarding it in the description, along with a really good, really in-depth video about Max Landis and him being super weird about Carly Rae Jepsen. We're going to try and keep it to the substance of Max Landis's writing, his writing advice, and the kind of mythos that he's built around himself and that culture builds around people like him. And believe me, that is a very target-rich environment. So we're still going to have a lot of fun dunking on this dude, who again is definitely watching this, without getting into some of the more genuinely upsetting stuff.
Yes, and while we're on the topic of just his writing and his impact on pop culture, I, like many people back in 2016, 2015, big fan of Chronicle. I will point out that I have read the script, and it is not exactly what we got in the movie. It is measures worse. I won't quote line for line, but also it's worth pointing out that Josh Trank completed the film, but does not have a good personal relationship with Max Landis, and didn't even want him on set during the making of this. In a third link, you can sort of check out the details on that.
Yeah, this is the first Two Professional Writers that comes with some major footnotes. So, you kind of alluded to it there, Gus, but I think a question that we'll have to answer for at least a portion of the audience right now is, okay, but who actually is this guy? You may have heard the scandals, you may have heard about weird YouTube videos he's made, but who is this dude? So, for context, Max Landis is... Max Landis, no, I'm fusing him with a certain character from Inglourious Basterds.
Hans Landis.
Max Landis. Yeah. Max Landis is a screenwriter and producer who has written for a number of films, including, but not limited to, the aforementioned Chronicle, American Ultra, the roundly beloved Bright, and a bunch of other things. He also, I believe, wrote for the TV, Netflix adaptation of Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, and was a producer on the first season of a show that me and Gus love, Channel Zero, but it's an anthology, so he didn't have his grubby little hands on the better subsequent seasons. So that's who he is, but what will become very relevant as we get into the advice is who Max Landis is and what he's achieved is also inextricable from who his father is.
Yes, so, the Blues Brothers, the Blues Brothers 2000, several other movies, Schlock. John Landis.
That is so fascinating that the Blues Brothers and Schlock. I'd also like to add in for context the Michael Jackson Thriller music video, National Lampoon's Animal House, Trading Places, Coming to America, An American Werewolf in London, and more. John Landis was a prolific dude, basically owned the 80s as a director.
Yes, and so Max, his darling son, did start basically in the midst of running to home plate. He got quite a bit of a head start, and I think, that's worth keeping in mind. Also, final bit of laundry, if you want to hear, all this and more, what we're about to discuss, and you don't want to, subject yourself to Max Landis, if for whatever reason you feel uncomfortable that we're covering him at all, there will be a link to a Vine compilation by Brian Koppelman, which gives incredible writing advice from a working screenwriter that is sincere, it is well thought out, it is diligent, it is consistent, and it will inspire you. And with all that being said, let us delve into this milieu of tips, which I curated from none other than Max Landis's very own YouTube channel, Up to My Knees.
Oh boy, I can't wait to get up to my knees in Max Landis. Let's go.
All right, so we're going to start out with a bit of a longie, but I think it's important that I included all of this, like this entire paragraph. Are you ready for it?
Yes, let's go.
Execution in scripts. Sparseness, clarity, no cringe, out louds, which he clarifies is reading the script aloud. No overdirection, clear intent, always forward momentum. A page count under 121, but preferably under 110, and if possible between 95 and 100. A 3-act structure that is coherent in as much as it serves the momentum. Characters that do not betray themselves, they do not need arcs, but they do need momentum, direction, drive, trajectory. You have to know where each character ends before you start.
Okay, so, again, it's this weird thing that a lot of the guys we cover on this channel do, where they'll poison the well by having some pieces of what sounds like very reasonable advice, but there's this clear kind of A, weird underlying agenda, and B, a kind of, sense that they don't really practice what they preach. And I'll admit, not even we are immune to this if you've seen us roasting our own old tips in Two Professional Writers Are Over. Mm-hmm. But stuff like, for example, okay, let's take this point by point. Give me a clause at a time. Let's react to Max's advice here.
Okay, so sparseness, clarity, no cringe, out louds, over direction, clear intent, always forward momentum.
That's one sentence?
Well, yeah.
I mean, he's already failed his own thing of clarity here. And what a useless piece of advice no cringe is. And again, it's really funny because if you've ever seen a Max Landis script, even some quite recent ones like Bright, it's full of over-description. It's full of weird, editorializing of what the characters are thinking at different times in a way that would be really bizarre and difficult for an actor to express or a director to film. It's full of that weird, overuse of, italics and bolds and underlining for emphasis.
You are correct, Henry, and you are so correct that, while we were doing our background research for this video, we managed to dig up it's an over 400-page script, a spec script that Max wrote about Super Mario Brothers.
Super Mario Brothers.
That is a truly staggering page count, which does not fit into this, but I have heard... Greta Gerwig, the original draft of Lady Bird was between 300 and 400, which, that's fine. Sometimes that's how long an idea takes. The difference is Lady Bird was an original concept and the script became Lady Bird after it was edited.
Well, and Greta Gerwig directed Lady Bird as well. She could make the script however she wanted because she was working from it.
Yeah, so that is the difference between, a direct act of sincere, honest creation and, the Super Mario Brothers script, which, just appears to exist only as self-indulgence. Now, I bring this up not because we want to go out the gate and, roast every cringe bit of writing to be he broke the no cringe rule. I point this out because what this paragraph is I think Max repeating what he has been marinated in from birth. Because when you look at all of this stuff in its totality, this is kind of every screenwriting book is this. This is what every developer, every kind of basic Hollywood professional would say at a baseline without really any regard to craft. This is just what they're looking for. The only thing that's really about craft is the is the page counts, which is just industry speak.
Yeah, no, he does very much speak in kind of industry cliches. Like, it is this very, like, Blake Snyder type stuff. We've both read Save the Cat. We've even pointed out some of the advice from it that we like and like have used. But Blake Snyder never made a good movie in his life. Like, they all
No,
sucked.
no.
One of the few he actually produced was fucking Blank Check. Like, it's this case of, like, trying to make things that suit the tastes of producers who are typically in the studio system, the people who are out here, like, killing art. It's one of those things that's just so funny, and I think we're going to encounter this more and more, that Max Landis, coming from this, like, old guard screenwriting background, is so informing of not just how he's able to have his success through advantages that coming from a very wealthy and B, a very connected family has given him, but B, how it's informed his, like, screenwriting philosophy in a way that's made his movies worse.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out, too, that, like, Max himself would say that he resents these, like, executives and people that, he has the ability to rub elbows with because of his background. Like, he resents every step of the way these managers and these people who are, given to him like a silver spoon and able to make his movies and his concepts and buy his scripts in an access that, like, most of us wouldn't have. I also do, just before we move on, want to point out characters do not need arcs, but they do need momentum, direction, drive, trajectory. What is trajectory but an arc? And if you know where the character ends up before you start,
Yeah, trajectory is literally...
that's an arc. What do you mean,
And
Max?
also, like, that's the exact writing advice that made the end of Game of Thrones suck. You need to be willing to alter where a character ends up if the journey takes you elsewhere.
Yes, yeah, no, that is a big one, and it was those guys, like the guys who wrote that ending were also like, like, just get it done. Themes are for 8th grade book reports. Fucking, there is something about where I think we're gonna see this, like, artifact of, like, the spec craze, which, like, the industry changed, and also. Just gonna say it here before we move on to the next tip. Sorry to everyone who's writing a novel or, like, in like an audio drama series or, like, anything that is not specifically a screenplay. While there will be some universal stuff, Max Landis is a insanely prolific in terms of what he's reportedly written, not in terms of what he sold, that is unconfirmed, but his work is screenwriting. And his advice will all be about how to make a screenplay in Hollywood. So if you're expecting anything else, you could still stay tuned to see if you do. But again, that is sort of where he comes at this from.
Which is part of his problem, too. Max Landis strikes me as a man who's never finished a book. He has this energy of someone who the only things he takes inspiration from in life are finished movies or other screenplays he's read, and it's part of what makes his work feel so, like, dull and incestuous for the most part.
If somebody told me that Max Landis, the only books he reads are, like, novelizations of feature films, I would believe it.
The thing is, I wouldn't even believe that. I think the only books he's read would be, like, screenwriting books.
Oh, like Save the
hilariously,
Cat.
it's the difference between that and, I believe, the first piece of writing advice that Brian Koppelman gives in his Vines are all screenwriting books are bullshit. All of them.
Fair enough. And hey, maybe we'll get, some of Max ironically denigrating the work of those very same people because, nobody can do it like him. Anyway, tip number 2 is themes can become heroic in and of themselves and change the architecture of the way a final confrontation with a villain works. And I want to give a slight bit of context to that statement, is that he uses The Dark Knight as an example of this.
I'm getting war flashbacks. That seems like exactly the kind of crap that we would have included in our villains tips.
No, it's so true. It's so true. This was said in the context of, like, the Joker thinks that the people on the boats in The Dark Knight, spoilers for The Dark Knight if you haven't seen it.
Came in 2008.
But yeah, like, they don't blow each other up, and that means that, like, without Batman solving that directly, the themes triumph and they become heroic.
Which is just, what a bizarre kind of wanky way of putting that. What so many of people like Max Landis do, and it's the people that, again, our boy Brian Koppelman refers to as the bunko men. People who basically repackage kind of age-old ideas or advice, but fill it with, like, jargon. Here, like for example, right? Say you are sitting down to write a story, in whatever form. How the fuck does that advice help you? Like, you're sitting there thinking, are my themes heroic enough? Like, that's a worthless piece of advice that can only be applied to a work retroactively. And it's not like Chris Nolan and his brother Jonathan, who wrote that screenplay, were thinking, oh boy, we've made this a properly heroic theme in the final act, lads.
Here's the thing. I will at the same time, like, you're right that it's, like, retroactive. I will at the same time say that I think that the point of this was that, like, the hero doesn't have to do like, Batman didn't have to get both detonators and save those boats.
Again, that's the thing. When you pull at a thread, you realize that it is something that, in that true kind of, like, vapid, egocentric style, that there's nothing under the surface there. Like, I think theme is one of the most...
It's a fair enough, you've discovered that some stories are not like other stories.
Yeah, theme is a very contentious idea in story.
On YouTube, specifically. It's not contentious
yeah,
in real life.
On YouTube especially.
Just on YouTube.
But it's one of those things that I think in a lot of ways it's kind of like legalese. How, like, there are certain people, like, we were lucky enough that we were able to, like, go to university to, like, learn about things like this and have it explained to us, but it's language that feels like it's pushing some people out. I would say the best way to write theme from my perspective is to learn about the world, learn about different systems of belief, learn what you think about the world, form opinions, form convictions, back them up with knowledge. Like, for example, how do you feel about the government? Does it overreach or does it not provide enough support? How do you feel about taxes? How do you feel about big corporations? How do you believe people should treat each other, and why? When you form strong beliefs on these things, when you sit down to write stories, if you are writing honestly, your worldview will naturally seep into how that story is told. It will define who your hero is. It will define who your villain is. What you think the world is like will define how the arc of the story goes. And then, in like second and third and onwards drafts, look at what you've done, detect the ideas that have appeared naturally in your story, those are your themes, and then say, okay, how in the edit can I clarify these? How can I have the decisions better reflect and explore the ideas that are happening in this story, because it's being told based on your worldview, which is much better than, as we've kind of talked about on this channel before, this idea of, like, I'm going to write a story about how far is too far, and just sort of, like, vague philosophical pap like that. The best themes should come from your own outlook and worldview, whatever that is for you personally.
Yeah, and I also think that it is one of those things where, like, Batman was gonna beat the Joker anyway. Like, it's not like the theme, like, grabbed Batman and dusted him off and was like, hey, just so you know, you're the good guy and he's the bad guy. And people good because Batman believe people good, and Joker believe they're bad, so that's not gonna happen because he's bad. Like, that's being a little reductionist, but I think it is true, like, that the character is going to have to be present within the themes. They can't save a character who is non-specific to them.
Yeah, no, it's something that ultimately I think a recurring thing we're gonna see in a lot of this is that I think it is advice that is meant to make Max Landis seem smart and profound rather than being something that any normal person could apply to their work. But perhaps I'll be proven wrong. What's the next tip?
The next tip is remember your story. Remember it because you wrote while you were driving. You wrote while you were working out. You wrote while you were at work doing your other work. You wrote in the shower. In your head, you should always be writing. You're remembering a story that has never existed.
Again, I think it's a matter of like think creatively. Like, like the thing is, I believe if you want to be a storyteller, but you're not always passively thinking about your characters, about your ideas, about your stories, like I think that is what normal people call just being an imaginative person. And I think if that's not you, if you don't like thinking about stories, if you don't like thinking about characters and ideas, I don't think you're gonna feel the drive to become a writer anyway.
Yeah, and I will say this. I kind of think that this is decent advice, taken on its own. But at the same time, I cannot help but feel, well, Max, what if somebody, just theoretically, a human being has other things they need to think about besides whether or not they're as good a screenwriter and filmmaker as their dad? What if, just hear me out here, what if people generally have to consider other work related things, a family or two, and supporting that family and having to support themselves as well? Maybe there are other thoughts that enter their head, and it's not so easy to always be thinking about writing because you're not just going to walk into the room and have the rest of the world waiting for that thing you've been thinking about all day to come to fruition.
Yeah, like I think it's another undeniable undercurrent of everything here. The behind the myth of every like bohemian wonderkind writer, you will often see daddy's money, as is absolutely the case with
Hmm.
Max Landis, because there's a lot of discourse around Nepo babies, and there are some, like, Nepo babies who I would argue, despite coming from, like, famous and well connected parents in the industry, they still go on to, like, prove themselves. Like, two recent ones, like Margaret Qualley and Maya Hawke, I think are
Hmm.
both really good actors in their own right, who have had some great performances, and I think there is a good chance that even if their parents weren't already famous actors, they might have still climbed up the ranks. But the element of privilege is not just in the connections that get you into the right rooms, that get you into the right meetings, that get you representatives, that get you managers. It is simply easier for rich people to break into the creative arts because they can coast on their parents' money while trying to break in, rather than, like you said, Gus, having to, hold down other jobs, have other obligations. And like I'll happily declare this right now. My dad is a former road worker for the gas company. He's a roadman in Guy Ritchie parlance, who had an injury to his collarbone and has had to take up landscaping instead. And my mum works as a supervisor for special needs children at a school in my town. Like, neither of my parents are all involved in the creative industry. I'm the first person in my extended family to go to university. So it's one of those things where there's an undeniable sense of frustration when you see someone like Max Landis, who has every advantage behind him and is like retrofitting this mythology of, well, I'm where I'm at because I'm just superlative at this.
Yeah, and I want to say like to give my own experience in regards to that. Like my father is the manager at a liquor store. My mother was a kindergarten teacher. She retired recently, and both of my parents throughout their lives and even now have done creative work. They ran zines. They did poetry. They've done poetry readings. Both of them have published a novel. They were able to still find time for creative writing, which means everyone out there listening, it is possible for you, but don't believe Max Landis when he tells you you're going to have as much time and as much leeway as he does. You're not, so don't turn thinking about your idea and trying to remember it every time you see a blank page. Don't turn that into work. Don't turn that into the thing that brings you all your value in life. Just if you're thinking creatively about your stuff, that's good. But remember, you have other things in life than churning out a million scripts because dad says that's your destiny.
Yeah, no, it's true. And by the way, to take the advice of an actually brilliant screenwriter, as in won a fucking Oscar for best screenplay, Jordan Peele has been very outspoken in the fact that it's best to treat your writing like a hobby until you kind of break through. He just chipped away at Get Out in his spare time for 10 years while doing other things. It would be his, like, when he would get home after a long day, like, filming and doing stuff for, like, Key and Peele, it would be rather than watching a movie or, like, playing a video game, he'd be like, oh, let's spend, like, an hour adding a little bit to Get Out. And it's funny because if you look at the Get Out screenplay, which I thoroughly recommend you do, just Google it, it's online, but you can also buy a really cool annotated book with his thoughts on the script in it. Um, it is so straightforward, so unadorned. It doesn't have any of the kind of pretentious flourishes that your average Max Landis script does, but it's so much more engaging. And while so much is added to the Get Out movie by his screenwriting, the by his directing rather, the actual screenplay still moves at such a good pace and is still so engrossing, particularly because it lacks so many of the "I'm so smart" isms that you see in a lot of like Max Landis type screenplays.
Yeah, and I also want to say, like, a fun minor sliver of the Jordan Peele mythos building up to the release of Get Out is that he was also working on, like, a Chupacabra, like, horror comedy script at one point, which just went away at a certain. And I bring this up because those were his own words. Where he was like writing 5 scripts at once, and then Get Out was the one that stuck. There's something in there about being flexible, about like following the fun, and like taking an idea to its logical extreme. But then when something you start to believe in more comes along, you switch to that. And you can find a lot of the professionals talking about stuff like this on a channel that we're just going to give a brief shout out to, Outstanding Screenplays.
Mm.
I would say that their videos where it's just directors and screenwriters talking about their craft are pretty good. Their shorts are admittedly a little weirdly gooner pilled lately. I don't know what's up with that. But like, have you seen that shit, Henry?
No, like, is it all like weirdly horny?
It's like usually like a bunch of just like actors like talking about like sex scenes and like weird like stuff on set. Like
Did Max Landis take over the channel?
no, they had one about like Jennifer Lawrence talking about that like no hard feelings, and people just say like yeah she got like it's weird, man.
That's really weird.
Yeah, it's strange, but the main channel videos, like getting advice from actual screenwriters, that's what you want to be there for. The shorts are just probably to keep the lights on, and I don't begrudge them for that.
Yeah, and in that same vein, I also really recommend checking out a channel called Behind the Curtain that has this really interesting series that is like how I wrote slash how we wrote for all these different things. And basically, the videos are just video and audio collages of the creators of different iconic movies and shows talking about how they wrote it, which again, I think it comes back to saying that like the best advice you see will be the ones that directly come from people who have walked the walk. And I think ultimately, um, I wouldn't necessarily take writing advice from people whose work that you don't like, because they're only going to be able to tell you how to make what they made. And the thing is, you can very much point that same accusation at me and Gus, but go check out the Kingmaker histories, go check out Less's Morgue, go check out our pieces on Mayfair Watcher Society or No Sleep. I've got an upcoming piece in a anthology that I'll be plugging on here soon. But again, the proof is in the pudding. You can check out our work, and if you think, oh, this is fucking terrible, I hate it, feel free to disregard anything we've ever said. But a great quote that I really love from a woman who was like famous for being one of the worst opera singers of all time. Like people hated her, basically went and listened to her shows to make fun of her. But on her gravestone is written the words, "A lot of people said I can't sing. Nobody can say I didn't sing."
And I think that's true. At the end of the day, if you find something in our creative work that causes you to be like, Gus and Henry don't know what you're talking about, then we release you. You're free. You're free.
Yeah.
But also, it's like we got more stuff coming out because, we ultimately make this to communicate with the people who do like it, who do get what we're doing. The reason we cover writing on the internet really at all is because we want more writers. We don't want to shape you into us. We want you to know that there's a lot of obstacles in this path. There's a lot of difficulty. There's a lot of people who have succeeded and have failed at it, but you could be one of the people who is doing either. And isn't it good to know that you can try?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. So, what is the next piece of inspirational advice from Zen Master Landis?
All right, so we've got all story is time plus emotion, time plus incident. You break down moments of someone's experience watching a movie or listening to your story into the emotions they're having at the same time, or at the time, into the experience you want them to have.
What a load of shit. This guy talks like such a wanker. Movies is emotion.
I
Sorry,
know.
story is emotion plus time. Like, what the fuck? You're
Time
not
plus
Andy
incident.
Warhol, you fucking poser. Time plus. Like, what the fuck does that mean, Max? Like, that's such wank.
It's really funny because it's like, yeah, you're breaking down exactly how the audience is going to feel as they experience the movie. And it's like, are you? Can you know that? Like,
When I see Will Smith smashing that fairy in Bright and then saying, "Fairy lives don't matter today," well, I mean, for a start, that definitely does break the no cringe rule, I think. But, like,
Henry, let's be fair. The Fairy Lives Don't Matter Today was not in the original screenplay. What was in the original screenplay is Will Smith's character arguing with his wife and calling her breast implants bolt-on tits.
yeah, her $6,000 bolt-on tits. And he says that, like, all the problems in his life come from strippers. Read the Bright screenplay. It's so, like the movie is bad, but the screenplay is bad in a different way. It's so strange and, like, a hateful. Big Grinch 2 energy.
Henry, we can dunk on him in the Bright screenplay all we want, but will we ever be able to italicize the way he does? Will we ever be able to bold and have action lines that stretch on for multiple sentences of unnecessary description?
I guess maybe I couldn't, but to revisit The Substance, which is a good movie,
I fucking love The Substance.
like, what he's saying there, can I just hear the first couple of sentences again?
All right. All story is time plus emotion, time plus incident. You break down moments of someone's experience watching a movie or listening to your story into the emotion they're having at the time, into the experience you want them to have.
Have you encountered people writing outside of the space-time continuum, Max? Like, what does time have to do for any of this? I don't think anyone is ever writing a script and being like, well, as I'm writing this scene, I don't know what I want the audience to feel in this bit. I think
But
everyone writes with intention unless they're doing it on acid.
well, here's the thing. I think that this is a fish don't know what water is moment because like this is Max Landis trying to put into the words being around movies and movie people and the movie industry his entire life has done to his brain. Like he sees the passage of time as the passage of movie time.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that's like, what story is rich plus famous dad.
What story is story.
This is so in hindsight utterly like Wendigian. It's like, hey, here's some like no shit Sherlock sentiment about storytelling phrased in the most like obtuse way possible in the hopes of making him seem like really articulate and intelligent, but in actuality makes him seem like he just did a fucking bong rip before he gave this advice.
Right.
Story is time plus emotion, man.
You can't do that. We'll get demonized.
We'll get demonized, just like Max Landis.
So our next chunk of wisdom from old Max Landis is once you start feeling like you have all this passion and energy and excitement about a story, but it's not coming out right, try a different way. You've got 30 pages in and had to stop. Open a fucking Word document and write an outline.
What the...
Like, I think
yeah.
that is
like,
fine.
See if
like, that's
outlining
fine.
helps, you know? Like, see if outlining helps. But it's just another
Try it
fun
a different
thing
way.
of... I think I think it's the natural instinct of humans that have evolved at this point, where if they hit a snag, I think for the most part they're gonna intuitively try to find a way around it. If you want to give the advice, taking it in good faith, steel manning it, of, hey, you've tried to pants it and you got stuck. That's okay. Maybe that's a sign that this thing needs more planning.
I do think that this is probably the best tip so far because it's just purely practical. Of just like, you hit a snag, but don't like stop. Just change your trajectory, change your way in.
But don't have an arc, just a trajectory.
Just a trajectory.
Don't have an arc, just have the place you're going, the place you will be, and the curved line between, but don't have an arc.
Don't have an arc. Don't have an arc, man.
What are you, Noah? You don't need an arc.
I do want to point out, because I watched an ungodly amount of Max Landis YouTube videos, mostly from 2015, 2016, and 2017, to gather these tips.
Truly vintage years.
Right, yeah, especially for Max Landis. Those were the glory days. I was going to say, like, there's stuff that I didn't curate and didn't write down, and it's all the times that Max Landis says people getting 30 pages in to a script. And citing that, like, writers... So he must just hear from a lot of people who are like, oh, Max, I only got 30 pages in and I got stuck. And I'm sure that must give him carte blanche to be like, you stupid idiot child, I'm so good at this, do what I do.
By the time you've written 30 pages, I've written 30 screenplays.
And your mom.
I'm the L. Ron Hubbard of screenwriting.
Yeah, first draft, last draft, get it out the door. But yeah, no, I think it's the 30 pages thing is something that he'll repeatedly say, and then maybe more than anybody who's ever given writing advice, he'll do that thing of, which can sometimes be good life advice, but he'll do that thing of like, ooh, if you're really struggling, maybe you're not a screenwriter. Maybe you don't want to do this. Maybe you're not cut out for this.
Maybe your dad isn't John Landis.
Yeah, like, we've said this before in that, like, hey, consider if you really want to go into this path. And I think that's reasonable. But the amount of times this guy said it is almost like, Max, are you saying some people are predisposed to becoming screenwriters? Are you saying that maybe there might be circumstances that might push someone into this career and enable them to continue into it beyond the point where many would fail?
So, it's that screenwriter genetics.
I want to create, like, this is a diamond of clarity, a fucking shimmering gemstone of wisdom here. That Super Mario Brothers movie script that we pointed out earlier, that was Max Landis's alleged, and that's a word that could be used a lot, that was his alleged 29th feature. That was his 29th feature.
And he said he was 19 at the time.
Anyone out there, if you have written 28 scripts by the time you're 19, and you're like, maybe it's a good idea to take one of the biggest video game franchises in the world and write a 445-page fan fiction in a format that no one seeks out for its own entertainment value. Maybe that's what you'll do next. Because that's the life Max Landis lives. Is that the dimension you live in? Where you're being told by this guy that you're not allowed to try? That you should give up before you've even written one script?
Yeah, literally any time that you're full of doubts about your writing career, just picture his fucking stupid smug face and think, fuck you, Max Landis, and keep writing.
Hundreds of scripts, but the number that have been sold is not publicly available. Speaking of, his next advice is, just write a script. A blank page is not frightening. It's an opportunity. It's empty land. It's not a void. It's a void you have complete control over.
That's still a void, buddy.
Yeah, like let's not split hairs over the language here, but it is very funny that it's not a void. It's a void.
Genius writer.
But yeah, apart from this, it's like, a blank page, it can be frightening. Like, you should try to fill your blank pages as quickly as possible, but I think the reason why blank pages are frightening to most of us is that opportunity and empty land are not the first things that pop into our heads. Opportunities are far slimmer for the vast majority of us.
Well, that's the thing. I think also, this is something that we're going to sort of bring up a lot in this video, but because it is so utterly inextricable from the matter at hand, and why, if you are someone who comes from just, like, for lack of a better way of putting it, a normal family like me and Gus, or even, because to be honest, I recognize that the fact that mine and Gus's parents are loving and supportive, even if they couldn't throw money at us and give us connections, is a privilege. I know not everyone has that, not everyone has parents, and not everyone has parents who are good people, but it is a matter of, psychologically, you are going to be in a better headspace going to a blank page and thinking, well, when I'm done this, I know I will be able to get it in front of people. Whereas if you are someone who is thinking, blank page, weeks or months of my life churning out at the bottom end 90 pages of usable stuff here, and I might never get to show it to someone. Is that wasted time? Am I better doing other things? Like, that shit weighs on you.
Yeah, and I will say that, like, when it comes to breaking into not the industry, not publication, but just breaking into your own creativity and getting to that point where it's like you're there, the personal connections are going to matter a lot. Supportive parents, a teacher. I was lucky enough to, in my high school, there was one of the English teachers was also teaching a specialized screenwriting course. So I, along with 20 other students, had my first dabbling with the format through that class. And that is like a privileged position. Like, that is something that I was given. And other people, everybody else out there, you're going to have varying degrees of this, but there are people and circumstances that are your way into creativity. You just need to find that little bit of support, or even that piece of media or that book or that moment of inspiration that just, it makes you dive in, no matter how much time you can give, no matter how far along you think your idea is. There is going to be that moment where you'll take to this. And however far you take that is going to depend on a lot of factors. But if that imagination is in you, that beginning spark is something that you need to recognize when it happens and hopefully look back at as a good memory.
Yeah, and I'm going to build on this with, I want to put something on the screen quick. This is the first time Gus is seeing this as well. It is a tweet someone made. Specifically, take a look at the tweet that's being quoted, which says, for anyone who's doing other things, a friend of mine just pitched something to a studio, and the executive said, "That's great, but nobody is buying anything with a point of view right now." And it is a case of the studios are scared and greedy and unreliable. And the reason I bring this up is, that will benefit people who write stuff that doesn't have a viewpoint anyway, like Max Landis. But if you want to tell meaningful stories, you don't have to wait for the green light. No matter what your skills are, develop them, and you can start putting things out online right now. Whether it's videos like we're doing, or the audio dramas that we often do, or fanfic, or like posts on Reddit or art. Because yeah, the truth is, I think the one thing that we agree with Max Landis on is that it is a horrifying thing to do, to write something that you care about and put it in the hands of executives and producers. If you've watched the Heads of Sierra Blanca video, you know that we know that firsthand. But it is one of those things where, like, you've got to be bold, you've got to be honest, and the last thing that you should ever do is preemptively restrict yourself or make yourself smaller because you're anticipating someone demanding that of you at a later stage.
Absolutely. Like, nobody's first any story should be, let's write for the market. Trust yourself enough to follow your own brain. Follow the fun, as Jordan Peele says.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like, it is a foolish decision to follow the market because, believe me, by the time you're done making the thing, the market's already changed. Just make what you wish existed.
Yeah, and there comes a point where, like, every person who's breaking into screenwriting, myself included, though I have not done it yet, is told, make something that can be filmed in a single location, limited cast. That's something that's easy to produce, and that might sell. And maybe what it comes down to is, if that sounds good to you, if that sounds like something you feel like would challenge you in a way that you would find creatively stimulating, go for that. But until then, everything you write, everything you do, every idea you come up with or outline, that's something that, like, you throw yourself into just for the sake of having it be fun for you. Because you have limited time to do writing compared to some people.
By the way, speaking of breaking into screenwriting, here's a little bit of inspo for all of you.
Yes, we got some fun news.
Yeah, friend of the show and my fiance, Meg Chewton, has spent the last 6 years making a completely incredible screenplay called The Open Secret of East Hall, which is based on a no sleep story they wrote back in, I think, either 2018 or 2019. This screenplay, which, by the way, has gone through, I believe, 6 drafts. We all had our eyes on it. We're all happy with it. Meg did lots of research, took breaks between the drafts, and did other stuff, like all of the projects we've listed. But all of that work and conscientiousness has paid off because that screenplay has been made one of the official selects for the screenwriting contest at the Renegade Film Festival, which is in the top 50 genre film festivals in the world. It's run by Heather Langenkamp, Nancy, the final girl from the Nightmare on Elm Street series. And yeah, no, Meg's thing is up for that. It's in Santa Marietta, Georgia, near Atlanta. We're all likely going to be down there for the film festival if you want to get tickets and come see us whenever this comes out. It's in late February. But point is, that is a sign that if you take something that you care about and you just work really hard on first finishing it and then making it good, you can have incredible results, because Meg's screenplay was selected 75 official selections out of over 500 applicants from all across the globe. So again, and just like us, Meg has no connections in the film industry, no one who could put in a good word. We're just out here being like weirdos who make stuff, And this shit can happen to you if you finish things and put yourself out there.
We're honestly all really inspired by Meg, as we always are, because, like, as much as Meg will focus on one particular project and, redraft it multiple times, that is also one of their greatest strengths as a creative, and something that Henry and I constantly feel like we need to learn from, because we can be quitters sometimes in comparison. We're very happy about Meg's success in this regard, and feel free to write congratulations Meg down in the comments, because it's a momentous occasion.
They'll see it and they'll appreciate it. But again, the point being, at the end of all of this, if you can get your head down and make something that is truly undeniable, and then you put in and have the bravery to put it out there, to submit it to places, I'm not saying that you will certainly have the success you want, but what I will say is you certainly won't have the success you want if you don't start.
With much chagrin, I invite us to return to the writing advice of Max Landis.
Our good old buddy Max Landis.
Oh! That's a new one. I hope we're the first to say that.
Yeah, if you've got this far in the video and you haven't already congratulated Meg in the comments, which you should, prove your devotion by putting Max Landis down in the comments. Let's see if we can get it trending, because the fucked up thing is, I genuinely think he'd be more upset by that than some of the much more serious allegations that have come out about him, because that's the kind of fucking guy he is.
Yeah, alright, so Here's this next bit of advice. I know we've been really mean, but this next one feels like something we might say, actually.
Which is not always a good thing, but let's go.
Definitely not. The truth of your first idea is that it probably isn't very good, or worse, it is really good, but you don't have the tools yet to execute it.
I mean, yeah, he's not wrong. I don't disagree with it.
I agree as well. I do want to give a bit of humorous context to this.
Go on.
He was speaking, about this particular thing, about a movie idea he had when he was 5, about an alien in a space alien universe who meets the creator of that universe and asks him why he exists.
Wow, that's some real Isaac Asimov type shit.
He considers that his first idea. I need to emphasize, he considers, space alien in space world, because I'm 5, as his first idea. That is something that you can only consider your first idea when, at 5 years old, Movie Dad and Movie World is like, movie boy, tell us about your movie!
Yeah, this man living his fucking Royal Tenenbaums ass life. And what's the whole thing where she puts on a play and he dislikes it and he's like, I'm only one man.
Yeah, and it's like, Max, maybe the reason why Space Alien Boy didn't take off
is because you were fucking 5.
It's not like you would have been able to, direct the movie or write it. He even said in that same thing that it's he couldn't spell and couldn't do paragraphs. Well, yeah, because it wasn't your first idea. It wasn't. You're not you were barely a person yet.
Me and Meg were in England over the holidays, spending some time with my family, and while there, we went to my grandma's place where I've got a lot of my old stuff because we were sorting out things to potentially bring back. And I found a bunch of my old, stories that I would have, written in, exercise books when I was, in fucking preschool. And they were all about some hero defeating a high priest because I'd recently watched The Mummy and the Mummy tie-in cartoon, so thought a high priest was, a really cool thing for a villain to be, because that was the case for Imhotep. But it would be so deranged of me to be like, yes, this is one of the early pieces in my oeuvre. It's giving the fucking it's giving that Dan Olsen video on Angry Video Game Nerd, where in James Rolfe's autobiography he's talking about movies he made when he was a baby on a camcorder with his friends.
Films.
Yeah, as though they're part of his filmography and not silly stuff he did with again, James Rolfe seems like a really nice guy in a way that Fucko definitely is not. But I do just think there is something inherently sad about, like, the degree of self-mythologizing it takes to even remember this shit from your childhood.
Yeah, well, I think remembering it is fine. It's the framing that's the problem. Because I remember that there was this one Quentin Reviews video, before everything was Nickelodeon sitcoms, for a
Oh yeah,
while.
he was going his home movies with his dad.
Yeah, yeah, and he talked about his dad's history as a filmmaker, an indie filmmaker, not a fucking Hollywood filmmaker, but just a guy who made stuff with his buddies because it was creative. And I think there's something that he says, and I'm paraphrasing, when he's showing these old home videos he made, where it's there's not really much to say about these. They just kind of go on. I'm not even sure how to review them. And I think that that's the truth of a lot of the home movies we had as a kid, where it's you can remember your the fun day you had with your friends, or you can remember talking about it with people, but it's not anything yet. It's practice. No, it's not even practice. It's play, and that's what a kid
No,
should
it
be
is.
doing. Play it.
Okay, this has actually triggered a memory in me that I'm going to share with the audience here. And this is going to become
Uh
part of the
huh.
Henry lore. It is very silly and a little bit embarrassing. But me and one of my childhood friends who was weirdly also called Henry, we were very into Call of Duty and stuff at the time because we were 11-year-old boys. And we decided using one of those mini DVD camcorders that I got for Christmas one year that we were going to make a film called The Truth of Terrorism. we and we I very much remember that it involved BB guns and shit like that. But the scene that I
Yes,
very
yes.
distinctly remember when we were making it is I had this laundry hamper that was made to look like a toxic waste bin, and we had a scene where in the scene I think it was meant to be me and the other who were wearing these skull masks were building this WMD. So we were just filming ourselves on a tripod, throwing stuff into this toxic waste laundry hamper, while I think on a iPod or something, we were playing just out loud and diegetically the song Beauty of Annihilation, which I believe was from a Call of Duty Zombies level, as we're throwing this stuff into the fucking hamper. And we were editing it in Windows Movie Maker, and it's the silliest, stupidest thing looking back. But I'm smiling thinking about it, not because I'm man, that showed that I truly had the makings of a great storyteller, but because it was a good time goofing off and being a little idiot with one of my friends as a kid, you know?
Yeah.
Which I think is the normal person way to conceptualize your memories like that. And we know you have the same because there's a video about jam fighters on this channel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, there's Jam Fighters, which, again, that was just what if Link and a chibi dragon and some guy from a manhwa that I read at that age were all on the same team, but they were my OCs. But I also did the silly play movies too. There's one I distinctly remember as we filmed it on my birthday, and we got a bunch of costume stuff. And it was we filmed it under this old bridge in my hometown, and all my friends were there, and we took all this footage. There were chase scenes. I played the monster, and we were all having a great time, and we're oh man, let's watch it. We made such a good movie. I shit you not, we watched it. It was 10 minutes long.
That's so fucking funny.
And it was the tape, the VHS tape that we recorded on. I still have it. It's in my parents' house, and it's called just horror tape with black text written on it.
I mean, to be fair, if I found an old tape that said a horror tape on it, it would set my imagination on fire, I will admit. But I think the point of this taking this little jaunt down memory lane is that it's endemic of people's tendencies to self-mythologize. Because here's the thing, it's easy to look at stuff like that and be like, oh, these ideas, these creative projects, they're the sign of a nascent virtuoso. But it's like, that's what kids do. How many people also made like little home movies of like themselves running around in Halloween masks with their friends at 10 and then went on to happily become like chartered accountants and fitness instructors? You know, people only look
Yeah,
back
yeah.
and mythologize it to make it this like story where like they had life figured out from when they were fucking 5. If it ends up in a certain way, but you ignore the false positives. But when the reality is that all kids are creative, all of them, society just sadly has a tendency to beat it out of people.
Yeah, and you can still be creative as like a, a fitness instructor or an accountant or a football playing
Yeah.
king in space.
Though maybe don't be too much of a creative accountant, or you could get in trouble.
Yeah, but the accountants are very creative. Yeah. See, I was gonna say is that like, what this comes down to is that like we remember these fun things because like it's part of our childhood. Like the joy of being able to have a camera placed in your hands and having friends that you could spend time with. The fact that those things are true it was probably like more beneficial to us overall in choosing whatever path we wanted to do than the fact that it was recorded.
Yeah, no, it's true, and I think as much as it's, I really don't have any sympathy for what he became. Um, it does feel, at least hard not to feel at least a little bit sad for little Max Landis, who
Mm.
probably very much conceptualized, well, being good at this is how I impress my father and how I make him like me. When I think, again, we're very lucky, you and me, Gus, in that we both have dads who will like do what makes you happy, even if it's not the same thing I'm doing.
Yeah, like our parents had us like play around with the film cameras and with our friends because they thought that it would make us happy. Whereas I imagine like talking about Space Boy and Alien Town and trying to write it out in crayon and make your first screenplay in crayon must have been this huge mounting pressure for tiny nascent monster Max Landis. Like
Yeah.
I will say the video, the YouTube video where this tip came from, before we move on, is called "Eat Your Ashes."
I thought you were gonna say eat your asses.
Eat your ashes. No, eat your ashes, and it's. If you're gonna watch any bit of Max Landis content based on this, make it this video because you will probably see like that kernel of like almost self-awareness and like a good advice hedged between like the most like cokehead energy I have ever seen in a single video.
You should have called it snort your ashes.
All that video would need is an actual light white line being on screen and a certain sound effect, and then everything would be explicable from that. So
This feels like, and this is a little teaser. By the way, we're hoping to have Killjam Triple X debut by the end of February, which I'm very excited
yeah,
about.
Kill Jim Triple X.
But Gus, it sounds very much like something that your character Randy from Killjam Triple X would do. I just had the thought of someone stirring cocaine into like a relative's urn and eating the resulting mixture with a spoon.
Snorting someone's ashes with cocaine to gain all of their knowledge.
Well, here's the thing. I shit you not, right? When Tupac died, like in accordance with his final wishes, some of his friends rolled some of his ashes into joints and smoked him.
Yes, including his good friend Judge Alvin Valkenheiser of Valkenvania.
Join the Patreon, $1 a
Hula
month.
hula hula, boola boola boola.
You boys sure are musicians. Oh god, if you know what we're talking about, you're immediately in the winner's circle. You're our best friends. All right, what's the next tip?
And if you don't, you're nothing but trouble. The next tip is there is no regimented way to be a success. There are only regimented ways to be a failure. The rubrics you discover, the rules you discover, will make you feel like you're not doing good enough. And that's how you can't feel when you're making art.
Oh man, he's really giving us layups here, isn't he? He's really giving us again what one regimented way you can get into success is have your dad be John Landis. And one regimented way you could fail can be found in a link in the description.
Write over 100 features and sell an unspecified. Don't ask. Don't ask what percentage. I also want to point out that like this paragraph, it has very big like Amari Stevenson's self-insert talking about the business world in that one amazing movie.
We simply buy you out.
Yeah, we buy you out and replace you with other people. Like there is something about
Josh Trank kicks you off set, and he rewrites a lot of your script.
there is this common theme among like very rich fail children, of which Max Landis is most certainly one, of like reframing minor pushback and people like putting the normal amount of obstacles in the way of them as like a huge overreach of like they just want to see me fail, they're trying to kill my dream, because it's the holy trinity of Max Landis, of Amari Stevenson, and of Vivian Madrano. The three of them, in their works, you can see this narrative, especially especially with Amari and Vivzy Pop, who, unlike Max, can actually make things.
Yeah, no, it's a credit to Vivzy. Like, regardless of what we've said about some of her work, she's by no means a failure. She's a very successful animator and showrunner, and I wouldn't try to deny that.
No. The chip on her shoulder and the chip on Amari's shoulder, they're both the chip of like someone who has overcome those obstacles. Whereas compare that to what I just quoted from Max Landis is not from a work he's produced. It's not from a film he's made. It's not even from a screenplay he's written. It's from a YouTube video where he's like, how to be as good as me. I think it's worth saying that, like, of all the people that we have covered in this series, Max Landis might be the most, there is the biggest friction between the advantages he has versus the, actual creative output he's been capable of.
No, it's true. But because I think a great counterpoint from the Two Professional Writers series is that Joss Whedon came from a TV writing dynasty, but there is no denying that the success of Joss Whedon, even if he is in weirdly a similar way to Max Landis, quite a shitty guy, has massively eclipsed the his forebearers, whereas Max still very much is this little homunculus who exists in the shadow of his helicopter parent.
Cool.
Which has multiple meanings, by the way. Google John Landis helicopter.
If you know, you know. Yeah, we're in a really upsetting time period with, separating the art from the artist. Especially, I think, more than anything with Neil Gaiman. Mecha Gaiman himself, as Chuck Wendig would say.
Yeah, complete piece of shit, as it turns out.
Yeah. And, we don't want to bring down the mood too much, but I think it is worth pointing out, Joss and Neil Gaiman, when things came out about them, it was a tragedy because people still liked and reclaimed their work. When things came out about Max Landis, nobody mourned.
Yeah, nobody was like, man, I'll never look at American Ultra the same way.
Oh no, American Ultra, not my favorite movie, American Ultra. How will I ever enjoy Bright again? How could I ever enjoy Bright, in the first place, actually?
Yeah, no, this dude spent his, whole career making fucking coworker movies.
So much of what we hear about Max Landis is him telling writers how to do things on YouTube, which means that he is, in the bulk of what he does, no better than you and me in this series, Henry. And if our dads were collectively John Landis, if we were the adopted children of John Landis, and we were still just YouTubers instead of filmmakers with all of the same drive we have, that would be insane.
No, I think it is just really funny before we move into the next point. Just, we made this joke a while back off mic when we were conceptualizing making this video, but the mad Jack Horner energy of all I had was a mansion, loving parents, money, a thriving bakery business that I'd someday inherit. Just useless crap like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's delusion. Like, the longer I watch these Max Landis videos, which, again, I do not recommend watching more than one of these during a single day. It'll put you in a bizarre headspace that I'm still in.
You might need to be medically treated for douche chills.
Yeah, like I am this close to saying some bizarre, unwarranted, out-of-pocket shit about the creative catalog of Carly Rae Jepsen. The only thing that is keeping me sane right now is the fact that I also watched a bunch of Sundance short films. So the power of good cinema, honest cinema that has made it and stood through the difficult creative process. That's the only thing holding me together right now.
Well, then we better move on to the next point then before things get nasty.
This video could be titled The Cosmic Horror of Max Landis, because we're about to delve into, in this next tip, a truly Jordan Peterson tier analogy.
Do not hide unwanted things under the hog.
You as a screenwriter of a story, hold on.
What?
I wrote these really fast. Hold on. I wrote these handwriting. So, you as the screenwriter of a story that you came up with are the only person in the process who will ever be truly alone with that story. You are a mother holding a baby. You are pregnant with it. It is in your head. And then, no matter how complicated the process of writing it is ultimately a piece of you.
Max has been on the adrenochrome again, guys.
You're pregnant with your story, baby, in your brain.
Yeah, again, it's I guess this is the kind of shit that you have time to think about when you got that Landis money.
Yeah. Well, it's also there's something in people who give hack writing advice and brain vaginas. They're really fixated on that. You're pregnant in your brain, and Chuck Wendig did the mind vagina analogy, which, all right, fine, trying to be shocking. In the original Chronicle script, when the boys started bleeding after overusing their psychic power, they went on this whole diatribe about my mind vagina has a period, my brain gina is flexing too hard, and I think one quip like that is translated into the movie, but I shit you not, the word brain gina is said multiple times, and there's even a hacky don't call it a brain gina. Nah, brain gina's the terminology for it.
That's the kind of thing you say to a woman. We are buddies, though. It is proper Toam dialogue.
You know what? Amari Stevenson made his movie. He fucking made his movie.
He made this in North Carolina with a box of scraps
and a really cool car and weird friends and women from the local church that he met at a Christian meetup.
And hit anime dub VA Trina Duhart.
Listen, I don't want to fully endorse anybody we talk about, but I feel you could learn more from the making of that one amazing movie than anything you could hear from Max Landis, genuinely.
No, it's true, and I'll admit, Max Landis and Amari both have that they have very weird and kind of unhealthy attitudes about women, to put it mildly, but I think there's no denying that Imari, as, in this battle of the failed sons, is a more interesting and unique creative voice who had to battle more to get his thing done.
Yeah, no, I would say that that's very true.
And again, I watched American Ultra much more recently than I've watched Toam. I couldn't tell you a single line from American Ultra, whereas, Gus and I off mic quote that one amazing movie at each other constantly.
I left American Ultra with a profound sense of catharsis and relief. And that is because I had to sprint to the bathroom because for the last 20 minutes of the film when I saw it in theaters, I needed to pee really badly.
That's so fucking funny. Alright, what's the next tip? Because that was nothing.
Yeah, that was, very eldritch in nature. Heavily Cthulhu-coded. This next one is, you need to make it real. Even if it never gets made, even if you publish it on Amazon yourself, even if you keep it in a drawer, even if it doesn't make you a dime. There's no reason while you're relaxing that you should be beating yourself up for not being creative, because creation is an act of love and communication to the world.
It's just me, or is that like a couple of different sentiments? And again, not even ones I disagree with. It's just, dude,
No.
lay off the fucking powder.
Well, here's the thing, man. Like, I think that this is a good example of, like, the more Max Landis advice you listen to, which, as we've highlighted, vastly outnumbers, like, movies and pieces of media you could know him from, especially in, like, the, like, 2015, 2016, 2017 years where he was just fucking everywhere. It sounds like these are coming from another dimension. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
in what way is he the authority on any of this? Because it seems like, and I know hypocrisy is like, you know, on YouTube, that's the worst crime you could accuse anyone of, even an actual criminal, allegedly. I cannot help but feel like this is just a guy who, like, will say all of this stuff and then it's not evidenced anywhere in anything he's made or done?
Yeah, no, it's true. And also, like, what is it with these guys who turn out to be, like, really bad people? And this, like, just enshrining of the concept of story above all else? Because Neil Gaiman, like, was constantly, almost to the point of self-parody, like, stories, the power of stories. And who has a better story than Max Landis? You know, like
Yeah, yeah.
it's the biggest. I guess when you don't have any like real world view, it's easy to default back to the non-committal nature of the power of stories, where people can just take anything they want from it.
Yeah, yeah, because like it's almost like a spiritual stand-in. Like stories are the reason we live. They're the most powerful emotion. I'll be real. People who talk like this, even though I love writing and I love telling stories and I love like, you know, characters, settings, plot, but when people say like, "Oh man, you know, we need more story these days. You know, storytelling is something that needs to be saved, or storytelling is dead, or like it's, you know, this is myth making." It's like, fucking, dude, do you like it because it's fun and you enjoy it? Or do you like it because you're like, you know, fucking Zeus on Mount Olympus casting down pure bolts of like spiritual human connection, speaking to the universal truths within us all? Newsflash, asshole! That second thing is just wishful thinking. It's not real. No path you will take in life makes you a god or even a demigod. Do things because you fucking like it. You're not part of some grand tradition. You're part of being the one time you get to be yourself. So choose what that is.
No, it's true. It's true. Just enough with the myth making bullshit. Just follow the fun and get writing. What's the next tip?
All right. So this is the context for this one is that this is like once you're already in the room with the executives who are making your thing. So, you know, already
Very
we're doing
relatable.
silver spoon logic. Yeah, exactly. But like let's get into this. You need to emotionally detach and remember this is a job, because it's from that logistical how do I do the job rather than how do I defend my art thinking that's where the best ideas, thoughts, and collaboration come from.
Again, it's really funny how that seems to go completely up against, like, this is a holy story, baby.
Because this is Max Landis post hoc trying to justify, and this is why I shut up and let them make the movie, even though I hated every single change.
And it's like, dude, in the case of what is widely considered to be the best movie you were involved in, you got kicked off the set.
Yeah, and this to me like reads as like, God, could you imagine Max Landis taking notes? Like as in like
Oh,
being
God.
given writing notes and being able to take them in stride. I can't fathom it. I can't picture it.
And here's the thing, don't get me wrong, taking feedback can be difficult for anyone. My most
anyone,
frequent
yeah.
writing job, I've had to take some really what I thought of as silly notes, and I've had to take that kind of it's just a job mentality and do the rewrite. But the thing is, it's just another case of like Max Landis is not like He is a professional in the sense that he, got paid to do the work, as we've often said, is the definition of professional in the sense that we use it, but he is not professional in the, like, personal quality. Again, people who are professional in that way don't get kicked off of sets. They don't, uh, you know, do cruel things to people who work with them. If you're taking advice on how to be like a nice and ethical collaborator from Max fucking Landis, God help you.
Yeah, and not only that, but like this statement is again, it's the people who have already chosen to make your script. You're in the room with them and they're deciding how to make the movie. Like, honestly, bro, you're fucking done already. Like, move on. Like, you don't need to be a control freak at that phase. You made the sale, but because you're movie boy from Movie Dad in Movie Land, oh, I'm still making it. I'm still part of it. No, dude. No.
Yeah, again, you get kicked off of these.
Yeah, Max, I wonder why things you have a hand in suddenly get so much better when you're no longer allowed to control them.
Really makes you think.
I wonder why. We move on to the very original and not at all artsy fartsy. Movies and stories are like dreams. Dreams are the only place we experience things that have never happened to us and yet are happening as though they're real. When we listen to someone else tell a story, they're almost pulling us into a dream.
Like, yeah, thanks, Sandman. Like, more
Henry,
of this.
Henry. Living is like breathing. The carbon dioxide exits your mouth and the oxygen goes in and then becomes more carbon dioxide to exit your mouth. So when you're living your life, it's almost like you're breathing to remain alive.
Yeah, like, again, it's more of this just that the only thing that matters is story. Like, when your philosophy is something that could have, like, Maya Angelou and, like, Joseph Goebbels, like, nodding, you might just be devoid of principles. You might just exist in a world of vagaries. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, this high and mighty bullshit led to all of the fucking boner jokes in American Ultra. Or, like, oh, it's pulling you into a dream. Like how in the screenplay version of Bright, he argues with his bitch stripper wife, just like in my dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, just like in my wet dream.
Yeah, you're not some fucking mystic, Max. You make trash, pulpy genre mashups. So enough of this, like, oh, we drag people into the realm of the Inarios. Like,
Well,
it's a
I will to give credit to this idea. Dreams do often make little sense. Only have slightly recognizable iconography as the main thing that you can remember when you wake up from them, and last an arbitrary amount of time. Most of them you can't remember and will not be seen by anybody. So in that way, I think dreams are a lot like Max Landis's creative output.
You know what? You're not wrong there. What's the next one?
I will say just to spin a little bit of creative advice from dreams, like actually, because the whole movies are like dreams, stories are like dreams. It's stupid. It doesn't mean anything. I can tell you from personal experience that there will be times where I'm beginning a creative project, usually when I'm doing my screenplays, so it's relevant to this, where I will have the dream. And the dream and the details of the dream don't need to make sense or like be directly translated into the work, but it will be like, I felt that so strongly. I remembered that so strongly. These feelings are within me. Maybe I'll start writing and like something will come from this. I think it's worth saying if you're a writer and you have a dream that you very strongly remember, it's probably because your conscious mind has something to say about that at some point, and by free writing and exploring that idea, you might get to what that is. It's about self-reflection and listening to what your mind and your subconscious is telling you.
Yeah, and you'll see even more kind of on that in the Brian Koppelman video we recommended too.
Back to Max Landis's tips, we have Know the last 4 pages. And by know, I don't mean generally. I mean literally write the last 4 pages. You can change it later, or even as you go, but know for certain where your story ends and what feeling you want to leave people with.
Again, this is just a case of like, look, if that works for you and if that gets it done, go for it. But I just don't think something that specific is gonna be actionable as a piece of advice to give to people.
Yeah, because, like, at the end of the day, you can really write your script in any sequence that works for you. And, like, we've already, like, even in the tip, it says, like, you can change it later or as you go. So, like, it's not even like writing those last 4 pages has it set in stone. And also, like, not to like, like, define is and define was and define, but, like, 4 pages is so arbitrary. Like, the last 4 pages of anything could be anything. You're not going to know what the last 4 pages of anything are until you get there. You might as well just have, like, a bullet point on an outline or, like, a
Yeah.
general idea. Like, it's whatever works, right?
I mean, that's the thing. It's another perfect example of if you want to seem like mysterious and smart, throw out very like specific prescriptive advice and be like, this is the only way it can be done. So saith I.
Yeah, exactly. And as we know, like, we specifically know, sometimes the very person who gave that advice will come back to it later and be like, I don't know. You don't have to. like that happened with us, with our tips that we did in response to Lily. Yeah.
No, it's true, and I think definitely looking back at all of those tips, as much as some people kind of like defend them, I think it is a case of like, yeah, if you want to be prescriptive with yourself to start, go for it. But in the same way that like the older and more experience you get, the more you have to acknowledge the nuances. It's that often like the kind of joke people say about like people who like never who can't like comprehend that like being non-binary exists, for example, and they're like that they are taught in like first grade, yes, the lowest number is zero, nothing can be lower than zero, and then later like they get introduced to like minus numbers and they'll be like, no, that's bullshit, there's no number lower than zero.
Right. Yeah, the world retconned what was canon in my brain, my head canons. No,
You joke, but is that not what the fucking Mandela effect is?
that's true.
People who are like who so refuse to admit they just remembered something wrong that they're like, no, I must have fallen into an alternate reality.
The Mandela effect, in the way that most people uses it, annoys me so much because, like, you would think that it's like a large group of people experienced a different version of this historical event or perceived it that way, right? But the way that most people do it is that I personally, on my own, remembered this differently. And it's like, if it's you, then it doesn't matter. Like, I could fucking say, like, up until I was 17 years old, mashed potatoes were called smashed gragoogles, and then everyone started saying it differently, and I don't know what happened. Like, you could just, that's nothing. Nothing occurred.
Human brain is a very fallible thing. Memory is not an objective thing at all. Like, if you literally study psychology and neurology, you will realize there is so many perceptual faults in memory. Like, it just can't be trusted most of the time.
Exactly.
And thanks to AI, photos and videos can't be trusted either.
Exactly, and that's why you shouldn't worry about remembering that guy with the knife. You know him, standing in that parking lot over by that green car. Anyway, next tip. You get blocked, and it's so discouraging. But if you, writer's block, not getting blocked on social media, but I'm sure he's experienced that too.
When you try to chat up a babe and she blocks you on X.
She blocks you. What a bitch.
When you find her account on Bumble, but because only she could message first on Bumble, you find her LinkedIn and start trying to chat her up on LinkedIn and she blocks you, it can really hurt your feelings.
I mean, yeah, I was using Bumble. I was doing the feminist one. Doesn't that automatically entitle me to something? Anyway, getting back, you get blocked and it's so discouraging. But if you give it a minute and maybe do something else, don't procrastinate, but like take a walk, take a shower, work out, your brain will render those ideas and obvious answers will come to you. You can only lose if you give up.
Again, like, this is really menacing the alternate universe of their advice. If you get
Yeah,
blocked, do
yeah.
something. You only lose if you give up. Find another angle.
Find another angle. Never say never. Your dad wouldn't say never. Your dad would say, the helicopter's fine, actually. This set is completely safe.
You know, do something else. Buy a can of Freon, spray it into the lock, break the lock with a crowbar. Like, try things, you know?
Yeah, really disrupt. Get in there.
Get in there,
Oh.
climb through the window with a knife.
Mercifully, we only have one more remaining tip.
God, I feel like I've gained so much wisdom today.
I feel like I've gained so much gisdom in my brain, my pregnant brain.
Separate the fart from the fartist, am I right?
Survival of the shittest. Anyway.
We're broken, fuck.
Yeah, alright. No story needs to be smart or good, but the ones that stick around usually are.
No story needs to be smart or good. That's my creative ethos. I'm Max Landis.
No story needs to be smart or good. You just need to write it because dad will get mad at you and maybe your life will have no purpose.
That's so fucking funny.
I know it's the same joke. I know it's the same joke we keep making, but it's the joke that he is.
Yeah,
he
it
is that
because
living joke.
His life is one punchline repeating.
He's the punchline to that joke.
Like he's living that Ballad of Don Jr. from Nick Lutsko life. When you look down at your hands and calloused and cold and see that all that you have has been handed to you, does that make you feel small, Max?
I just gotta say, I love my normal dad. Do you love your normal dad, Henry?
I'm very, very appreciative of my dad. I love him, and he has always done so much to support me. Has never crashed a helicopter into a group of children while filming illegally to get around union and safety restrictions.
See, funny that neither has my father. My dad has never done that, and is also incredibly supportive. Has he knows the way around getting a creative idea to fruition, not necessarily for profit, but for its own sake. There's maybe a reason why I got into writing and my brother got into music. It's because we had this environment that wasn't the entire state of where we lived in New England telling us that this was our destiny, but that, our parents had a nice, supportive, creative household for us to try whatever we wanted to.
My dad's never been involved in the creative world, but the thing is, he is the hardest worker I know, and I've taken forward his workmanlike attitude into my own writing and try to have that as best I can.
Just saying this right here and being real and honest, your work ethic is something that, although sometimes it scares me and I wonder if you're okay, it is something that I deeply admire about you and wish to emulate at times, because it's fucking incredible, man. You are incredible.
That is incredibly kind of you to say, dude, and I think it's ultimately, again, it is my mom and my dad both engendered me with that, in the same way that I think your wonderful creative madness comes from having multidisciplinary creative parents, not people who are wired into the industry and can make a phone call to have a judge make decisions in a certain direction on a case involving a helicopter, but in a way that I guess advances creativity as a way of life, not just a way to amass power and success and all those other things that turned Max Landis into a monster who, for all of it, unlike Neil Gaiman and Joss Whedon and others, we didn't even get any good movies out of it.
There is a poetic second sentence to this that I think will bring it all home. But yeah, no, I want to agree and echo a lot of what you said just there, because there's an interesting and sort of beautiful irony in the fact that, like, Max Landis could effectively be a clone of John Landis grown in a vat in the Hollywood Hills and rose up from under the Silver Lake to join us mere mortals and become the ultimate screenwriter. And what's amazing about that, despite all of these advantages, all of this, bizarre extra-dimensional advice that he gives, all being marinated in the very spirit of the Hollywood industry, of all of the grindset nonsense that is pushed to all the people trying to break in. Despite all of that, he still ended up a subpar failure of a creator.
Yeah.
And I want to close out the advice portion of this by saying that the second sentence of his last tip is, you know how many movies used to get released every year in the 40s, and how many of them do we remember? Only the best ones. And Max, your movies are not the ones that we remember.
No, and I think what would probably devastate him to hear is, even ones that he would argue were, compromised or whatever, people don't remember Bright. They remember Lindsay Ellis's Bright video.
Yeah, exactly.
And at the end of the day, while the life that Max Landis has led made it easier for him to get agents and managers, that life has now led to him being a rightly scorned figure, a failure. And as we were kind of discussing off mic, Gus, what makes his scripts bad are the same principles, the same patterns that make him such an unpleasant dude when push comes to shove. It's that he's never had to live out here with the rest of us. He's never had to worry about rent. He's never had to wonder what his purpose is in life. He's never, frankly, had to see other people in his life, though especially women, as unique human beings with their own thoughts and wants and everything. He has been cursed to write shallow screenplays because he's a shallow man. He sees the world in terms of story and genre when it's fucking chaos, but it can be a beautiful chaos if you find the music in it, and that's what being a great artist is. I can't tell you that you will have his same chances of getting an agent or selling a script, but if you're watching this right now, you have better chances than him, better advantages to be a good storyteller, regardless of who recognizes that.
Yeah, because, regardless of your success or how many stories you tell, or, even if you finish your scripts, which you should, but that is besides the point right now, what's important is that you will have lived. You'll have lived a life of experiences, of connections, of struggles, of emotions, of all these different things that make you you, that exists outside the bizarre, parallel mindscape that is movies. You have your story, and even if it's not expressed in any kind of creative medium, you're already living a more authentic existence than Mr. Boiled in the Story Bolognese Boy.
Maybe one day we'll all be little spacemen who meet God.
But until that day comes, we are not alive. Join our Patreon, support Meg in the Renegade Film Fest, and we will see you in the near future.